Okay, so this is it so far. As you can see, it's a little bit rough, but all the structure's there. This is now my new workspace because I changed to put the painting onto the easel. It's going to make things a little bit easier. As you can see, I've got the thinners, the linseed oil, and the brush selection. Everything's close at hand. Now the palette, I add the liquid on the palette itself because it's easy to mix it, and it's what I use a lot of. The only difference with the colours here is we have a little bit of turquoise. It's nice just to throw in an odd colour here and there. So that's the palette. And here we go, we're going to begin with blanking out the background using a white brush. Here I've just taken the Payne's grey and I'm just filling the spaces in. And as you can see, I'm just painting over everything. Don't have to be too careful at this point. Here I've added a little bit of Van Dyke brown into it. Now what I'm pouring down is really quite translucent. It's quite thin, the paint. This has got liquid and thinners. I've not bothered with the linseed oil on this. We don't care if we're going to go over some of what we've already painted, because it's all going to have to be finished anyway. But quite often you'll find that if you use this process where you paint the main elements and then you come in with the background, you're going to figure out that the background has to be a part of everything. And we're still keeping to that limited palette, so we're not going to go crazy with any colours. For the time being, we're just going to paint around the piano. That's going to come a bit later. And here we are, filling things in again. Come down behind him. Okay, so now we're going to start having a bit of fun. I'm going to introduce a few different colours into the background. Here it's basically yellow ochre with a bit of white. We're just going to throw that in there because as you can see from the reference, it's lighter to the right of the image than it is to the left. Once again, we've got more yellow ochre going here, a little bit of orange with this. Now I'm just using my watercolour flat brush. You can see on the brush itself where I picked up a bit of the yellow ochre and just carried on painting. As you can tell, we're mixing everything actually on the canvas. We're not doing too much mixing on the palette. And the more that I'm putting on, and the more paint we put on, the more we can see how the pianist is standing out and the pianist is looking against the background, and now it's going to start to be integrated within the background. So over on the left side here, we've got a bit more of Payne's grey going in. We're going to warm that up at some point. Painting around the piano. We're going to bring this in later. We'll just continue filling this in for a while. Now with the Payne's grey here, I've just took a little bit of the ultramarine and got that going in there a little bit. Helps cool off the dark area. So there we go, around the singer. My apologies for this being a little blurred, but once it's painted, I can't repaint it. But I think it's plain enough to see that we're actually just following the lines that we drew around the singer and just filling that in. Now, one of the reasons why we didn't do too much painting on the singer is because a lot of her will actually blend into the background itself. And once we get that background in, we can make a little bit more sense of what we are actually going to paint. This is one of those instances where it's not what you paint, but what you don't paint you've got to think about. There we go through, we just keep on following the lines around the fingers and see how they're coming together. I don't have an awful lot of paint on this brush. I'm just filling in the areas. We're going to be going over this a lot later. Now once that's done, we're going back to the singer. We're going to bring a bit more brightness and colour into the background. Once again, using the same colour palette, I'm just kind of playing around with the colours. If I don't like it, I'll just go over it with something else. At the moment, it's not looking too bad. Or maybe a little bit, maybe in the way here a little, but sometimes it can't be helped. Maybe I got a little bit too lost in painting what I wanted to paint. So as you can see, that halo that was around his head is almost disappeared. As I said, it doesn't really matter what we do, we can always change things, and this is changing to the colour that we want. Now don't be concerned about going over what we've painted, because as I've said, we're going to come back and do this again. So let's come down to here where we're doing the going into his waistcoat. Now what I decided to do with this, the waistcoat, is make it so that it's just part of the background. So there's no difference between the waistcoat and the background, and everything's going to blend together. The only part where we're going to keep it as a solid waistcoat is up at the top where the shoulder is, and the rest is going to fade down to just being a part of the painting. Now you can see I'm picking up a couple of different colours. This is where and sometimes, just to give that little bit of coolness, gives the picture a bit more feel. And as you blend the turquoise on the canvas, there's more of a green tint. This may be a little bit boring to watch, but this is all part of painting. So we're just coming in with a bit more depth. There we go, with a bit more depth around the waistcoat. The waistcoat is just an impression of what it is. You know it's there, it feels like it's there, but it's just part of the background like anything else. So here we're lightening up the back a little bit more. We put in some little highlights of lights and things like that. And as you can see, we've gone over the head of a little bit, but that doesn't matter. We're going to come back and repaint all that. Now we're just adding some definition to the elements. Let's put in his bow tie a little. A lot of these things we don't have to go crazy with detail. In fact, it's nice that the image is starting to have this kind of a soft edge with the background. That soft edge in one way helps the background and foreground to become part of each other. We're making the background feel a little impressionistic. We're not going crazy with doing too much in there, but we're just having a bit of fun with this. And again, we've got a mixture of cool and warm colours. This helps give it a little bit of depth, a little bit of mystery. But we're just going to keep on putting that in and putting in what we like, how we like it, without going too crazy. Okay, so coming around the ceiling a little bit more, giving her a little bit more of a depth in the background. As you can see, I've filled in most of the areas around the pianist and around the piano. Now, if you remember that little highlight that we put in, you can see why underneath the shirt. Kind of helps to bring that alive a little bit. Like I said, we're just having a bit of fun with the colours, we're kind of getting there. It's plain to see now that the colouring that we used in the shirt is not quite right. So we're just coming in with a little bit of the background colour just to try and even that up a bit. We'll concentrate on this a little bit later. So I'm just making those changes now because it probably started to annoy me a little bit that the difference in the colour wasn't there, that the difference in the colour was too much. So I'm just playing around with that. So as you can see, I'm just playing around with getting the colours right. Yeah, I'm just also adding a few highlights here and there. Just defining the areas that I've gone over with the background. Again, I'm just defining the edges of the waistcoat, areas which I painted over and lost. And there I am again, changing some little annoying areas of the shirt. I'm going to come up to the pianist head. We're going to try and blend this in with the background a little better. So once again, we're just keeping it nice and soft. We're not going crazy with any harsh edges. The other thing with keeping the edges soft is it's going to create a little bit of movement. And